Cool. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul Church. I am the Managing Director of Interquest. We are a tech, digital and data recruitment business, and welcome to episode 17 now. So it's 17 weeks of our webinar series aimed at our community of HR, staffing and talent professionals. So things seem to change and the world seems to move very quickly. Just a week ago, we were heading into lockdown, and today we're a few days removed from the news that a vaccine is on the way to save the day. I probably won't be the first in line to try one of those. However, the news to the market was a good one, and perhaps, just perhaps, 2021 now looks like a slightly more prosperous year than it did last week. We'll see what happens with the effectiveness and the impact of the vaccine, but we all have different views on that, I'm sure, on that, but on COVID as a whole. But I think whatever your stance, it was a boost for everybody, and it's good to start seeing that glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. But we're not here to talk about vaccines. That's a different webinar. Today, we are here to talk about culture and tech, how tech can accelerate culture change in a hybrid workplace. Now, for me, this is a big topic. As a leader, managing a business in a hybrid form is probably more difficult than the full remote we found ourselves back in lockdown, or the first lockdown, I should say, and more difficult than the old days when we used to work in an office. So I personally will take all the help I can get. And who is our guest today? It is, of course, Helen Wilson. Helen is the Director of Customer Success of a small local business called Microsoft. You may have heard of them. At Microsoft, they've been on a culture journey over the last 5 years, and technology has been a key enabler in that journey. Helen will be sharing what they have learned during this time about culture change and how technology can help accelerate it. And now more than ever, they are seeing customers transform their organizations for hybrid working. Helen leads the team of modern work customer success managers and customer engineers across the UK, driving business value realization within their enterprise customers in their modern work investment. Proud to represent the UK Customer Success Unit for diversity and inclusion, and to ensure everybody understands diversity and inclusion. It's good for their people, good for their business, and good for society. So, Helen, how are you? And thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
I'm good, thank you. Pleasure to be here. Really, really good.
Fantastic. So I suppose this is one of the easier webinars for me, because I know you've come prepared with a presentation. I can kind of sit back and relax like everyone else in here. So I suppose over to yourself and Dal.
Brilliant, thank you. So thank you very much. I'm Helen Wilson. Welcome to my home office. This is where I pretty much spend the entire working time that I am. I've got a pretty good setup. I'm really lucky. We talked yesterday about us all being in the same boat, but I think there's different types of boats. I think we are all in the same boat, but there's boats that have got holes in them and are leaking, and we're chucking water out, and then there's super yachts. So really, I feel very privileged to be in my home office and to have the space, but recognizing that people close to me in my team and wider out into our customer audience, that we're all experiencing different things. So I'm here with Dal. I've invited Dal along, and she, within my team, looks after the industry. So she's here to help. But actually, it was a bit of a sneaky part on my part, because Dal can also answer all the difficult questions, like Paul asks, how did you just put me on the screen? So I know it's Spotlight, but I don't know if actually you've got that feature or not, because I know I have, but I'm on a different version of Teams to everybody else. So Dal's here to answer the difficult questions and help me with the slides. So I am the Director of Customer Success for Modern Work in the UK. Modern Work is all of the things that like the traditional Microsoft Office stack of products. So my team look after customers to help them realize the value of the investment that they've made. But recently I've added more people to my team. So I've got about 80 people now, and we've added the engineering part to our business as well. So now I have people who can technically unblock for us to really let the customer success managers do what they do best, which is drive innovation within our customers. So out of those 80 people, I've got some really early in careers. We're a massive investor in interns who left school. And can you imagine onboarding into an organization at 18, leaving home and doing the whole thing virtually? It's like incredible for them, through to slightly older in career like myself. So I'm just going to set the scene with you on the insights that we've seen over the last 9 months. So the pace of change has been absolutely incredible. Remote and flexible working, it was long anticipated and literally arrived with us overnight. Crisis management, business continuity, sustained virtual operations, and really observed some of the most amazing examples of agile working with rapid decision making across our customers. And I can put these into 3 themes. So first of all, humanizing management, really close to my heart. You know, positive productivity time, behavioral change and cultural transformation are the things that I'm really passionate about. Secondly, I think about security, and I think about the security perimeter. It's no longer the 4 walls of our building, our laptops or our phones. You know, it's your kitchen table, it's your dining room, it's your bedroom, and disaster recovery is now always on. And the desire of our customers to reimagine the workplace has just been incredible. So our CEO, Claire Barclay, said in a recent report that we compiled with the University of London that UK organisations are facing this unique moment. We're buffeted by the headwinds of the pandemic and Brexit, and the nation's collective competitiveness is just being put to the test like never before. You know, but can organisations thrive? So, you know, we're seeing that our research has revealed that half of organisations are really struggling to adapt. And the tech intensity that was just starting and to gather pace before the pandemic struck has actually just become turbocharged. So to keep up, you know, we're seeing that leaders must act decisively and quickly, and small changes in approach to investment, people, technology can quickly boost that competitiveness for us. So really giving our economy the best chance of success post-COVID and post-Brexit, if we can just even imagine that we're going to be there. The research found that kind of more than half of the UK organisations have seen revenue fall this year, with more than 1 in 5 experience a drop of greater than 15%. And then the same proportion were really forced to scrap all their existing business plans just days after the lockdown in March. So to deal with the kind of unprecedented challenge facing them, the research identified the emergence of 2 strategies. One of them was hollow growth and the other is sustainable growth. And, you know, the context, the hollow growth is firms that are pursuing, who pursue hollow growth are really extracting as much value as possible out of the people, reduce costs, offer little support to their employees to adapt to their new conditions that they're working in, focus on their technology investments in silos. So, you know, the business is solving individual challenges rather than thinking about the wider picture. And then on the other hand, you've got organisations that are seeking sustainable growth, that they're striving to maintain resilience and have the capacity to adapt. They adopt leadership defined by empathy and decisiveness, and nurture a culture of trust, empowerment, inclusivity, and consider the impact of technology on a much broader scale. So the research revealed that companies striving for sustainable growth are faring much better. And then, you know, they're enjoying a turnover growth of maybe up to 15%, versus the companies exploring hollow growth are seeing a typical turnover fall of 15%. The report also highlights some initial steps organisations can take to put them back on the sustainable growth path. And these include things like addressing gender pay gap, levels of diversity, particular attention to increasing the number of female graduates, speeding up technology by maybe 3 months, migrating more of the workloads to the cloud, so that will help increase your agility, and this notion of creating innovation clusters amongst your technically literate people to drive kind of low-cost research and development. So in our world, that's kind of like the power platform, where people are able to do low-code, no-code development of apps to drive your business faster, but build that within your own competencies in your team, rather than having to always have to go out to get that. And then lastly, kind of Roxanne Morrison, she's the head of digital policy at CBI. She said, and they contributed to the research, she said that technology cannot be viewed in isolation. It must be underpinned by progressive leadership, fair and inclusive talent development, and adaptability for future change. So in order to build a sustainable competitive advantage. So today I want to share how tech drives culture and really what we've seen in our own organisation and some of the workplace trends. So we used to talk about talent shortage, but today the narrative is much more about skills needed and matching skills within the workforce. And we think of this as a skills economy. The statistics are something like 62% of executives believe they need to retrain or replace more than a quarter of their workforce by 2023. So we will need to map out, as companies and and as leaders, we need to map out the global skills needed for these new jobs, upskill, reskill the workforce, and enable a more efficient marketplace. AI, it's helping us look at how technology can augment humanity, making us all more productive. And 67% of executives say that AI will help humans and machines work together to be stronger using both artificial and human intelligence. We also need to keep an eye on and focus on diversity. And, when I think what we're seeing, and certainly what I'm really seeing, is this diversity and inclusion and well-being all kind of coming together, especially over the last couple of months when we went back in, and more so in the last couple of weeks since the second lockdown. So waking up to this realization that without inclusion, diversity is a bit like a leaky sieve. So 80% say that inclusion is an important factor in choosing the employer, and 72% would leave an organisation for a more inclusive one. And we're certainly seeing this, that organisations with inclusive culture are 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. And when I say we're seeing this, Microsoft is seeing this with the investment we've made in our culture journey. We are really reaping those benefits when, you look at the phenomenal increase in our stock price. But digital is empowering collaboration and the rise of remote teams, irrespective of where our location is. And this transformation is enabling more flexibility, and employees want that. So more and more employees, myself I will include in this, want to align my personal values and purpose with the company values and purpose. So when I was looking to move back to corporate, that was probably culture and the values of the organisation was really high up there in my top 3 things that were important to me. 88% of millennials believe that employers should play a vital role in addressing issues such as income equality, hunger, and the environment. And across all of these evolving trends, the differentiator for companies is the ability to be able to learn rapidly and change quickly in response to some of these market forces. And, I think that only the learners are going to survive when we're constantly reskilling, upskilling to match the skills that are in high demand. So I want to just focus now on that last trend around purpose and culture. And the statistics say, and it'll be interesting to see if this has changed post-pandemic, that culture is top of mind for many organisations. 86% of company execs say that they're actively trying to change the culture, but yet only 30% report that they feel they're successful. And it's that 30% I think is going to shift, because I'm seeing such a huge interest in culture. But actively changing culture is hard. And it's something we've been doing for several years. And we consider that we're on a journey of cultural transformation. In actual fact, we're not even in search of a destination, we're just on a journey. And I can tell you that when we set out to change our culture, we had a lot we wanted to retain from our 40-year history, but we also wanted to leave behind to help us prepare for the future. So as an organisation, we went through a 9-month process, and I joined Microsoft just as we were coming to the end of that 9-month process. And actually my first conference that I went on was to Barcelona, and I thought, oh, how glamorous, but actually it wasn't glamorous at all. I got on a plane, spent 2 days in an underground hotel room, and then got on a plane back, arrived in the dark, left in the dark, very little of the city, sadly. But I was put in a room, and this concept of growth mindset was positioned with us. And I was sitting with people who were saying, oh, it's just the next thing, it's going to come and go, or I don't want to have a growth mindset, or oh, this is interesting, what is this going to be like? So I was right at the starting point of this 9-month process coming, and actually we decided to ground our culture in growth mindset by being focused on being customer obsessed, diverse and inclusive, an approach we call One Microsoft. And if there's anybody who's on this call who has been, has worked with Microsoft historically, so 10 plus years, as an organization, I don't think we were particularly liked, and I feel that has made a complete shift. We would turn up from a bit like Darth Vader, we turn up from our Death Star, give you an enterprise agreement or a contract to sign, and then disappear for 3 years, then come back and expect you to do that and actually buy more. There was no notion of being customer obsessed. But we needed to change. Our competition was no longer IBM or some of those big, it was Amazon, a retailer, it's Google, a search engine. So how do we move forward in that? And at the core, we wanted to move from a bunch of know-it-alls to a bunch of learn-it-alls. So once we had this goal in place, we made a bold statement really publicly and asserted our Aspire to culture was going to be the key and future business success. So ever since that declaration, we've learned a huge amount on that journey, and we compiled these 10 key learnings. And today I just want to dive a little bit deeper into lesson 8, let technology accelerate the change, because technology has absolutely been the key driver in helping us advance in our culture change. So I'm just going to cover 4 of the 7 ways that we're using technology. And I hope as I go through these, I'm going to lead with what our culture goal was or is, and then explain the technologies we've used to create solutions to those cultural goals. And really, I hope what you'll notice is that this list of products or technologies and data, that you already have all of this within your existing, in your grasp, and you can just tap into it in maybe new and effective ways. So I'm going to start with the first area, which is connect to collaborate. So I think part of our culture, we need our teams to collaborate in new ways. And given the workforce trends that I mentioned earlier, this one is crucial to companies who are evolving their culture. And employees today are likely to be part of twice as many teams, and I don't mean Microsoft teams, I mean general teams, as they were 5 years ago. So the ability to support dynamic teams is paramount when you're working in a modern workplace. And equally important is enabling teams to form that are inclusive and allow for those diverse perspectives and inputs to be shared. So, there's many collaboration tools, and I'm sure you've got loads of different ones in your companies, or, like me, I have to go onto loads of competitor products to speak with our customers, my children, my parents, so, we're all dealing with that. But for us, Teams, Yammer, Office 365 are the heart of our organization. And you can see these ones along with things like traditional good old email are included in that. But one tool that we're really seeing impact in is Microsoft Teams. My customer success managers are focused purely on enabling teams within our customers. So, this is a product that's really close to my heart, and I know that Teams has been instrumental for many organisations. Especially as we went into lockdown, the privilege of being able to enable 1.2 million key workers across the NHS within those first few weeks, it's just phenomenal, and there's many others like that. I think when I think about Microsoft Teams, what's most important to me is that it democratizes access to content and conversations, because everybody on the team gets to see what everybody else is saying. I loved that our CEO said last week that it also flattens out the business, because just because he's the CEO, he doesn't get a special box on the screen, he's just on the screen, and depending on what view you've got switched on, it could be top, bottom, left, middle. If you've got the together mode on, he could be sitting on top of a shark for all I know. So it kind of like flattens out the organization. And employees, can be part of many teams, and they can move in and out of those teams with shared conversations. And then the second area, which has been core to our culture, has been about empowering our learners. And I mentioned we grounded our culture in growth mindset, and moving from know it all to learn it all. And I know I'm not alone in kind of understanding that learning and reskilling is going to be absolutely essential for success as we see this increased pace of innovation and technology. And this is so important because according to the World Economics Forum, in the next 5 years, at least 35% of core skills are going to change, and empowering learning should be key focus to all of us. So we took a long, hard look at the existing learning approach and realised it needed a serious reboot. And we had our training programmes pigeonholed in all different systems all over the business, and there was no easy way, especially when I was new into Microsoft and I was onboarding, to get access to the content that was relevant for me. So we worked with IT to use SharePoint Online as our front end, and we combined with Azure and machine learning and pulled in all the content from LinkedIn Learning, as well as other relevant third-party training content. So what we did was we worked with IT to create an internal one-stop shop for learning. And now, as an employee, I can find my required and my recommended learning all from one single location. We can customize that based on our profession, the organisation that we sit within, our role, the level of our role, the geography, and we can personalise recommendations using that machine learning. And, pre-COVID, when we were allowed to go out, I loved being able to have my LinkedIn learning on the go. I could have it on my phone. I could see trending content. And actually to be able to learn anywhere from any device. If I was in the car and I was listening to learning as well. And then to sort of reinforce that that cultural attribute of learning from others. So we in Microsoft, we're measured on 3 things: our individual impact, learning from others, so building on the work in others and helping others be successful. And culturally, we needed to shift to be able to do that, and that was another intentional thing that we did, that we are measured across 3 things, not just our individual impact. So it's driving the whole business and lifting the whole business. So we have an attribute of learning from others, and we recently rolled out a feature we called learner boards. It's a bit like Pinterest for learning, and it allows employees to contribute to our knowledge base. So in less than 3 years, we've seen this grow to more than 75,000 unique users, which is reinforcing this culture of a growth mindset and helping others gain new skills. And then this has been really interesting, this topic. So the third one was about culture change and using it to dispel myths, uncover insights, and then use that to change behaviours to drive new habits. So when you're moving through a culture change, you have a lot of legacy thinking in the system, and as a 40-year-old company, we had our fair share of that. And what we realised is that technology and data can really help debunk some of those urban legends, and especially when we needed to evidence that and give proof. So, for example, we had a long-held belief that we had to hire from the top 16 schools to get the best talent. And we looked at our internal performance data and compared those top 16 to the next 16 and realised that actually our employees performed at the same level regardless of school. And what was really interesting was that retention was better from those 16 outside of the top 16. So, of course, we want to continue hiring from these top universities, but we also wanted to diversify. I would not be standing here presenting to you today if we only hired from top universities. I barely managed to make it out of school, let alone go on to do any kind of higher education. So what we did was we shared these learnings with our managers, and that dispelled the myth, and we broadened our hiring practices. So really starting with those people in our talent acquisition team to help them understand this is the data, this is the reason why it's important that we diversify and we look broader. If we want to be truly diverse and inclusive of an organisation, we've got to stop narrowing our hiring and our talent pool. So think bigger, think better. So having all this data in the Azure cloud, in our case, has given us the ability to bring many data sources together from different systems to perform much richer analytics. So the idea is we move from just gaining insights, all very interesting, from that data to then operationalizing those insights and then using those new operational insights to create new habits. So a massive, massive piece for us as part of our cultural shift. And one area we looked at was the behaviours that made good managers. So we looked at workplace analytics data, and just for context, as an individual, I can see my behaviours, but when it goes up to a company level, then it's anonymised. So it gets themes that come out of that. So workplace analytics data, we combined that together with our employee sentiment from our Microsoft surveys. And it's not going to be too much of a surprise that, you know, when our data showed that managers who send more emails and in general, or worse still, out of hours or on weekends, had a much lower work-life balance score from their teams. But that may seem intuitive, but the key to then is to operationalize those insights to create the new habits. And in this case, we were using my analytics to nudge people when they're about to send an email out of hours. And this approach is really helping us move from data to insights to operationalizing those insights. I want to caveat that with in pandemic time, I think flexibility of working is got to be top of mind. And we've had a really within my team structure, I've always been really clear that out of hours just needs to be fun. So chat with each other, but please don't put your needs of finding something or knowing something on somebody else. And I have this kind of policy, like, if no one's going to die, I'm not going to do this till the morning. And I shared that with my team. And I when I first took over this team a couple of years ago, the first thing I put in place was the out of hours working, because the demands on that team to get an email at 8 o'clock at night that needed to be answered by 7 o'clock in the morning was completely out of control. We work for a global organization, it never switches off. So I needed to almost like stop that behavior to build a new behavior, but recognizing now that there has to be flexibility. So I've just put on the bottom of my email auto signature to say we work flexibly at Microsoft. If you receive this out of hours, out of your normal business hours, please don't. I'm not expecting a response until you're back in your business hours. And that's been interesting because I've had a lot of feedback on doing that. But I don't know about you guys on the call, but if I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because something's pinged in my head and I can't sleep, I do want to be able to get up and work if I want to, and I don't want to feel that I'm disturbing somebody else. So by having that on there, I'm almost kind of caveating, I might be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I'm not expecting you to get up and do anything about this now. So another example, we've learned that people who have 2 or more connects, this is our development conversations that we have each year, also have a much higher score on their employees' intent to stay with us. So, I think that's really important that we build this environment that people want to stay with us. As you know, it costs a lot of money to hire and onboard. And the time invested in that person being successful. And actually, as a manager, if I have somebody who I hire on board and they leave within that first year, that's down on me, not down on them. So I feel a huge responsibility to make that connect conversation really clear, and to support my team. So what we did was we created a Power App for our managers to operationalize that insight. So now we have a feature that alerts me if it's been a while since I had my last connect, and it makes me then easy to schedule it onto the calendar. And then the last workplace trend for us is probably the most significant of learnings that we've had around how technology can change our culture. So in the good old days when Satya could stand at the bottom of the stairs in Seattle and talk to an audience that was based in Seattle, or however many could fit in that space, And that was all, streamed all over the world for the rest of us to tune into. So in my experience, I want to see and hear directly from my leader to be able to provide feedback and participate in a two-way dialogue around the company's mission, their strategy and the culture. I want to be part of that and I want to contribute to it. But as you can imagine, communicating culture with 130,000 people in 190 countries can be quite challenging. So we leverage multiple technologies to connect at scale to ensure that our employees hear directly from our leaders. So one of the biggest first multipliers for us has been our ongoing engagement with our CEO and how he does that. And actually, when news is devastating, I want to hear from Satya. I want to understand how Microsoft is showing up. It really connects me to our purpose. And for us, it starts with the CEO connection page, which is on Yammer, and it builds up to a monthly town hall. But let me bring that a bit closer to home, because I recognise, the little company that I work for is not the norm. And I've been working with, really close to working with the NHS. We've taken and enabled the 1.2 million people across the NHS in teams since March. And I think the thing that I'm really really proud of, I spoke with a primary care in Leicester, and they have 12 sites across Leicester, so 12 doctors' surgeries, for want of a better explanation. And as they went into lockdown, those 12 places only talk to each other by phone or by email. All of their technology sat on premise within their buildings. They moved to the cloud in 4 days, and phenomenal what they have achieved. And how they collaborate and work together. But was so really proud moment for me. They ran a live event. So I don't know if you remember, but Leicester went into that kind of second lockdown because they saw this massive increase as we came out of the first lockdown. And they ran a live event for 5,000 people in the community. So that's 5,000 people that were able to ask questions, to engage with experts, with doctors, with world leading health authorities. They had over 500 questions come out of that session. Those 500 questions have now been built into the frequently asked question national document. And actually what that's done for them, it's realized that they can, you might not have 130,000 people in your organization, but when you can push that out into the citizens or into your customers and be able to communicate at scale, it's really a differentiator. So thinking about organizations that want to do their board reports or connect with other external bodies. But for me, they've taken live events and they're now thinking about how do they proactively use this mechanism, this technology, to connect with the citizens and the community of Leicester and all of the thousands of people, which I think they've also got something like 20 languages spoken there. And they're thinking about now, how can they proactively talk about things like diabetes and reach out into the community to educate and teach, preventative measures for that, and thinking about when we open back up again, how can they do that so it touches everybody, so it's not just the people who've got the technology at home. They could do that within libraries or community centres and really build on that. So it's been phenomenal to see how live events as a technology has just been so instrumental as we've gone through that. So I think, those are 4 of the 7 ways that technology is helping us accelerate our cultural transformation. And I hope some of what we're doing sparks ideas of how you can use technology that you already have in new and effective ways. And with that, back to you, Paul, and invite you to ask any questions. I saw some stuff popping up in the chat, so I don't know if Dal could have a quick look through that as well and see if there's anything that you want me to talk through.
Absolutely. Thanks, Helen. So much information there. It's fantastic. There were a couple of things that popped up in the chat. One of them was Go Helen, and there was another one which was Owen asked for some, I think he was quite interested in some of the statistics you mentioned at the beginning. He wondered if we could get some more information on that, but I'll catch up with you on that after. Anyone else in the audience, now's the time to put your hand up or put something in the chat box if you would like to ask a question, but I will absolutely ask one. So I suppose I'm kind of gravitating towards what this means for leadership. I really like the quote at the beginning as well around inputs and decisiveness and empathy. I couldn't agree more to that. But what do you think is the role of a leader in a hybrid workplace? Could we talk a little bit more about that, if that's all right?
Yeah, so I mean, I would love the audience to also chip in on that. What do they think that the hybrid work? Because so that role that did not exist, I guess. In the current form of what it looks like. So I think when I think about what does that person look like, and I ask this question of our customers, there's definitely this person, apart from all the leadership qualities and empathy and all of that kind of like to drive and communicate well, there's this piece about being a tech evangelist. So not to be, to be deeply technical, but more really about how do you really understand what does your business need and how does technology enable that? So I'll give you an example of that. We were working with with the air traffic control as a customer, and one of the things that they do a huge amount of normally when they're in the office is that they have whiteboarding and probably go through millions and millions of trees with their post-it notes, but that physical ability to be able to brainstorm together, and how do you do that in a virtual way? We talk to them about the whiteboard technology, about breakout rooms, which is long awaited and not going to be too long till we've got that. But how do we create all of that within the technology? So really understanding that if that's something within your organization that's really important and you're missing that now, how can technology enable that? But really that leader needs to be thinking about, this is the way our business or our rhythm of business works, and these are the things we're not doing anymore. What are the technologies that can bring them to life or light them up?
Absolutely. Okay, thanks, Helen. We've got a couple of questions that have come in now, so let me read them out. So from Andrew Dixon, so what role does technology have to play when businesses move into blended working, a mix of some people working remotely and others in the office post-pandemic?
Okay, so how does technology work in that?
Yeah, what role, so I'll read it out again, I've probably said it too quickly. What role does technology have to play when businesses move into blended working, a mix of some people working remotely and others in the office, but post-pandemic?
Yeah, so I think, where we've seen technology, when we did go back to work for that brief moment, some of the things that our customers were looking to do with technology was one around booking desk space and to be able to create that kind of secure environment to come back into work. Certainly being able to adapt how we run our meetings. So, what generally happens, I don't know, from a cultural perspective, we're always camera on. I have my own social experiment going on here with my husband and his work, and they're absolutely cameras off. And I can see a different level of engagement. So, but sometimes he's in the office and sometimes he's not. So I think this technology can enable that feeling of inclusiveness if you have the right behaviours, i.e. put your cameras on, be engaged, be present. So when you're going back into that hybrid, and we did do that, I think I had one meeting in the office this year, and I had two of my team dial in, one from Manchester, one from somewhere else, and three of us were in the room. And it was really about the inclusiveness of being able to set up the meeting room correctly, so that it would give us that experience of feeling like we were in the same space. But the number one thing for me is always is the camera piece. It's such an easy thing to do. It's such a big step to do it. But once you do it and you kind of get over the awkwardness and uncomfortableness and the fact that you've got to get dressed and brush your hair every morning, all of those things, then, you're in a different place. And actually it feels more like you're working and contributing and collaborating better. Dal, do you have anything else to that?
Yeah, just to add to that. So for all the customers that I've worked with, it's very much cultural as well, right? So I find that organizations that don't have part of that top-down approach where some of the leaders will demonstrate those behaviors by, switching on their cameras, by using the tools instead of emailing, using the collaboration tools that now are available. So where leaders are demonstrating and using and leading by example is really, really powerful. And the latest example I have of that is when we, for that short period of time where some of my customers did open up their offices, they did set up some rules of engagement as part of their comms. So for example, if I was going into the office and I was going into a meeting room, be conscious about the people that have dialed in to make the meetings inclusive. Ensure that they're using the raise hand, or encourage your employees to, maybe if it's going to be a large meeting, encourage them to take the meeting from their desks as opposed to going into a meeting room and not being inclusive. And I'm finding that when this is very much a top-down approach, that our leaders, your leaders, are demonstrating some of these behaviours, it's very, very powerful.
Thanks, Del.
Thanks, Dale. I think that ties in quite nicely with John Cross's question here. So John's asked, how do you ensure that the least physically present person is not considered the poor relation?
Okay, so so I think there's a new role evolved in the meeting, and I certainly saw this. So and actually my boss talked to me about this. So he when our offices did open back up again, he's based in Edinburgh, so he did not want to fly down to Reading for the day and back again. So he dialed in, and somebody else dialed in. And what happened when the presentation came on? When you lost the people on the screen, you were presenting, so you were on full screen and you couldn't see the people, they got excluded from the meeting. So like a real example. So he talked to me about that. But actually, I think that there is a new role of the moderator of the meeting, and maybe take it in turns to be the moderator. But I think somebody needs to be on point to make sure that the inclusion is happening until we naturally start doing it. Because I think at the moment our natural thing is to forget about those people, start having side conversations, and sharing crisps with the.
Helen's on mute.
Oh yeah, how's that happen? Got on mute, Helen. Not sure why.
I've done it.
There you go.
I didn't touch anything. So I don't know when did I go on mute?
Just about 15 seconds ago, maybe.
Okay, so what I was saying is that until we need a forcing function so that moderator is the forcing function until we learn new behaviours of being in the hybrid working. So I think for me, it's about having that intentional moderator in the room to make sure that the inclusivity happens. I mean, you can put posters up all over rooms, but you're still going to forget. So it's a DNA change for us.
Dale, anything to add on that at all?
Not from my side, no.
Oh, cool. So another question from Andrew Dixon. Can technology be used successfully to replicate large-scale all-colleague gatherings?
Yes. So I can give you a real example of that. So twice a year we get the whole of the customer success organisation together. We've just doubled inside. We were 300 people. We were kind of on the edge of doing a big Teams meeting versus a live event. We doubled the org at the beginning of the financial year on the 1st of July, so we've had to move to live event. But some of the things that we've learned that shorter, more impactful meetings have the same effect. We get the same outcomes, we get the same level of productivity, or higher levels of productivity. So how we run our large virtual events is we start them later, so maybe they start at 9:30. Derek, as an example, my GM, would do his keynote maybe for an hour. We'd have a break. Then we would go into a topic before lunch. So this time I led on it, which is diversity and inclusion, which is my other hat within Microsoft. And then we had a long lunch hour. And in previous virtual events, we've repurposed our our T&E cost, so all the cost of getting 600 people in a room with overnight accommodation, you know, the hotel cost, let alone the bar bill, all of that money has been repurposed into doing different things. So we've had Joe Wicks come and do an exercise class for us at lunchtime. We've had some phenomenal speakers. And the other thing that we've been doing is we've been working with organisations to help us send things to our people in advance. So we did, we've kind of matured that as well. We did Social Bite, which is a charity. So for every box of cookies that we bought, a homeless person or a person in need would get a meal. So rather than just sending out, you know, kits of stuff that is just fueling organisations, we try and do something that gives back into the community as well. And we've just done a wellbeing box, and there's been a donation to Mind, really thinking about mental health. So for every wellbeing box that has been ordered by the Microsoft person, there's been a contribution to Mind charity for that. And then the afternoon is a combination of inspirational speaker for whatever topic is top of mind. So we've had a guy called Dr. Michael Gervais come. He's part of our high performance mindset program. So he's really helping us power that up. And then we went into breakouts after he did his initial session to really help us like deep dive onto the topics. And the principle of high performance is eat well, sleep well, move well, think well. And we went deeper on those topics. And those topics will now become the themes for the next 6 months till we go into the next big all hands. So we have a kind of rhythm. We choose the big rocks of what we want to focus on, and then we build them in. But shorter, repurposing T&E, making them interesting, making them engaging, finding something to give back into the community at the same time. You know, they're kind of like the things that we've learned. And if you've got budget for Joe Wicks, he was good fun.
I think Joe Wicks is doing a 24-hour PE session. I saw for
He
Comic
is.
Relief, isn't he?
He is, for children in need.
Yeah, that's it, for children in need. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Andrew. Thanks for a couple of questions actually. Russell Waite has asked, how do you try to capture the incidental meetings that happen in the office as you bump into each other?
Oh, that is like the number one killer question. And if I find the answer to it, I'm going to patent it. It like what is, you know, in American terms, the water cooler. What is those serendipity moments where you meet someone because you're walking somewhere or doing something? We've done a couple of things. I've put into my team something called walk and talk. So we get up and it's a half-hour slot, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you can just dial in, dial out, be there, walk, don't talk, you know, just to have those moments of just who's on the call. I don't care who turns up. Some people turn up, so you're getting a little bit of that going on. But some of our customers have done things like kitchen connection, so they have an all-day meeting running, and when you go and make a coffee, you dial into that. And you'll meet somebody who's also making a coffee in their kitchen. So just some of those things, but honestly, we haven't cracked it. And when we do crack it, it's going to be amazing, because that is the number one thing, that serendipity moment of meeting somebody that you weren't expecting to meet. We've lost that. And when you do it intentionally and book, so I actually thought about all those people I meet when I'm walking around the building, and I did a sync with them in the first lockdown. I thought, I can't administer this. Actually, my PA wouldn't administer it. I probably would have made her do it, but it just seemed like it felt false. It didn't feel like it was authentic and genuine when I did that. So I generally just kind of like ping people and say, hi, how you doing? And do that. But we've not solved that one. Great question.
Yeah, it is a great question, I think. And it's not just, I think, colleagues. For me, it's my partners, it's my customers that I would bump into at some of the events that we set up.
Yeah.
So yeah, just really missing that interaction. So yeah, I would love to solve that problem.
Well, when you've solved it, can you let us know, and we'll bring you back on here. We can talk about it. Absolutely. Another question from John Cross. Do you have any suggestions on how remote workers can keep the same level of engagement with the organisation as an entity? Do we run the risk of people that don't walk into a building with the company name above the door feeling less like they work at that organisation, therefore care less or are more likely to move elsewhere? Does that make sense? I think
Yeah, it does. So that's like culture in a nutshell for me. and how we do that. I mean, in our organisation, 2 years ago, we started a program for our management, because it's our managers that make the difference in our business. It's not the senior leaders. It's that middle piece that make or break the employee experience. So we've been on a really big development program, and we've landed on these attributes of model coach care. And those are the 3 pillars of our behaviours. So we need to model the right behaviours. We need to coach our team to success and not tell them, coach them. So it's all very good having a massive advice monster that sits on your shoulder and you want to tell everybody your wonderful wordly experiences, but that doesn't help people grow and learn. So model and then coach and then care. And to really feel connected with your organisation, you need to have somebody that's helping you connect that. So, I mean, Dal, from your experience, you're somebody who's sitting remotely as an individual contributor, as you're known, in our business, versus me as a manager. What is your lived experience of being in our business?
Yeah, so I've considered myself to be remote since around 2012, where a lot of my role is focused in going into the office for meetings, internal meetings or customer meetings, but a lot of my time is either spent traveling or with customers or working from home. And I think in terms of remaining connected to the organization and remaining engaged and wanting to continue doing the work that I'm doing, I think it's very much down to, for me, it's down to how some of those key messages are delivered within Microsoft. So one of the first observations I had is that given that we are a global organization, the way that key messages are cascaded through our leadership team is absolutely phenomenal. So the messages that we receive in terms of expectations and how we're engaged and anything from work and strategy to well-being and culture is all embedded, and it's all surfaced through the variety of tools and the variety of teams that we work with. So the message is quite consistent, and it makes me feel very much part of the team. And working with our managers, working with our directors, working with our general manager and our UK CEO, we feel like we are on a mission. So we very much believe in our core mission here at Microsoft. And we're reminded of that, Helen, as well, on a regular basis in everything, our interactions with our customers, our interactions internally. So there's no way at any point that I feel, I haven't been to the office for a few weeks. I have absolutely never felt disengaged, because I guess the connection is always there, the information I need is there, and I guess it's just the way that we're used to working. And for us, I guess the biggest impact of lockdown was not having those chance meetings with our colleagues, not having our regular Teams meetings. I think that was the biggest impact. But over the last since March, that's no way in made me feel disengaged, and we still believe in our core values and our mission statement and what we're setting out to achieve.
Fantastic.
Sound like we're part of a cult, don't we?
The Microsoft cult. Well, look, we're just coming up to 2 o'clock, so I think we're about time to wrap up. But it's been fantastic content, and it's no surprise that we've had our highest attendance today of around 50 people. I'd love to think it was for the people coming to see me, but I think it was more around our speaker and our topic. So thank you both so much. Helen, is there anything you'd like to just kind of finish up on? Anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, just thank you for the opportunity. We are so proud of our cultural journey that we're on, and to be able to get the opportunity to share with you and to interact and have your questions and feedback. It's just been brilliant. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Dale. So next week, everybody, we're going to be discussing remote onboarding with the head of talent from Photobox and the head of talent from Babylon Health. We're well into this period now where remote onboarding is such a thing. We've got plenty of mistakes and successes and a blueprint of how to do it. So do tune in next week. Other than that, thanks for attending. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Dale. And I'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.